Okay. Good morning to everybody. The main topic of this panel is regional stability and cooperation on the Western Balkan. As you may all know, is the key of the economic growth in this part of the Europe. In this panel, we're going to explore both North Macedonia's and the region prospects on this front, bringing together top politicians and diplomats. So we're going to hear the views and the opinions of our Foreign Minister, Bujar Osmani, of the Minister of Economy and Finance of Republic of Macedonia, Anila Danai, and we have she will join us online. We already have her. And also, we will hear the opinions from the top diplomats. Mrs. Kate Mary Burns, the ambassador of the United States in North Macedonia. Mrs. Enke Holstein, ambassador of the Germany in North Macedonia. Mr. Roussos Kounduros, the ambassador of Greece in North Macedonia. Mrs. Rachel Galloway, the ambassador of the United Kingdom, and Mr. Andrea Silvestri, the ambassador of Italy in North Macedonia. Let's start with our foreign minister, Mr. Osmani. Mr. Osmani, on the Western Balkan, everything goes hard. Nothing is easy, not the EU integration. But besides, maybe the most used word when we are talking on the Western Balkan is the European Union and integration. But the second most used word is the regional cooperation. Please, can you tell us a little more what is the prospect of North Macedonia in the regional cooperation? Please.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to express my satisfaction that I'm participating in this international forum taking place here in Skopje after a while, and honored to be on the panel with such distinguished panelists and to be discussing regional cooperation and stability, which are the two sides of the same coin, closely interlinked, mutually dependable in all the dimensions of regional cooperation, whether it's political cooperation, economic cooperation, or security cooperation, which is the magic sort of triangle of regional cooperation. And I will start with all three components or aspects of regional cooperation. Political cooperation is a key ingredient of stability. It's an important catalyst for reconciliation in the region, for good neighborliness, for better political relations. And I think that the region has come a long way in this regard. Someone calculated that there are 71 regional initiatives, and one might say that there's an inflation of regional initiatives and that the results are not matching the investment. But I would not underestimate the progress and the results of this intensified communication in the region. I mean, we talk, we discuss, sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, sometimes we agree not to disagree. But this is all what's about. And if you have noticed probably that recently there is an intensified communication. Just this month we started the summit of Western Balkan leaders in Brdo Brioni. Then there was a Tirana summit, Vienna summit, Prespa Forum for Dialogue, which will happen next week in Ohrid, Berlin process on the 5th. And this is what the region needs. I read somewhere that someone commented that 50% of the problems in EU are solved just by the mere fact that the leaders meet regularly and frequently in the EU summits. And I think this is an important prerequisite for a regional cooperation in a region that was just 20 years into a war trenches. And I want here also to announce that we are launching a new initiative, and that's an initiative named B6 of foreign ministers from the Western Balkans in order to have regular, frequent, informal meetings so we can establish and improve interpersonal communication and interstate communication. And I'm glad to announce that the first meeting will take place in North Macedonia next week as well. Economic cooperation is at the core of stability and regional cooperation. In regards to the relation between Western Balkans and the EU, I think the situation is straightforward. The region is an island within EU. Just look at the map and you will see that the region is surrounded by member states, 18 million people, less than 4% of the entire population of the EU, size of Romania, GDP of Slovakia, or less than 1% of the GDP of the EU, 2/3 of its economy connected to EU. So geographically, economically, or whatever adjective you would add, there is no alternative that this region or the market in the region one day will be integrated into the single market. But there's a saying here, in order to get to the gates of EU, you need to open the roads to the gates. So the question is whether the roads to the gates are open in the region. And I think not yet, since our economy, our market is fragmented with many administrative hurdles that decrease the potential of the region. So it is important that we unleash that potential by defragmenting our economy, and here the response is common regional market, an agreement that we have signed in Sofia under the presidency of North Macedonia and Bulgaria of the Berlin process, including the free trade area with 4 movements, the free investment area, the free digital area, and innovation. And I think that a common market based on EU rules is an important stepping stone to prepare the region to integrate into the single market. Infrastructure is a problem. I read somewhere that the mountains in the Balkans were detrimental for the history and the presence of the Balkans, too high to prevent regional cooperation, too low to allow occupation by different empires. And I think still mountains are impediments in regional cooperation in the Balkans. There's a mountain between North Macedonia and Bulgaria that makes a 200 kilometers road from Skopje to Sofia more than 4-hour drive, or the same in between Skopje and Tirana. So it is important prerequisite that we invest in infrastructure and connectivity. Berlin process has made a huge impact in this regard. Economic investment plan of European Commission as well is an added value, but we will need to continue to invest in infrastructure and connectivity and on common regional market in order to create the preconditions, the region to unleash its entire potential for investment, for trade, and be ready to join EU. And last, security cooperation, I think, is instrumental in providing stability, and here fight against organized crime, violent extremism, and illegal migration. The only effective approach is through cross-border approach, and by doing so, I think that Western Balkans will show that it is of added value to EU as well. And last but not least, when we speak about stability and integration in the region, United States are very important strategic partners, not only of North Macedonia, but to the region as well. The new approach of the US administration to reinvigorate the transatlantic partnership creates a lot of opportunities that we need to seize and use it to foster the regional integration. A strategic partnership from as strategic partners from 2008, our intention is to reinvigorate this partnership and to expand the partnership as new NATO allies. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you very much, Mr. Osmani. It's good to hear that we have a new initiative, B6, with the 6 foreign minister. Obviously, the regional cooperation and strengthening. I would like to invite Mrs. Anila Denai, the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Republic of Albania. Mrs. Denai, which are the key areas of regional cooperation, especially in this post-COVID era?
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and very honored to be part of this panel. Distinguished Delphi Economic Forum, Excellencies and Assistant guests. This meeting serves our commitment for regional cooperation and the European Union integration process. It is very important to see this meeting as a forum of dialogue on how to reach this subject. Central European Trade Agreement and Regional Cooperation Council have achieved excellence, and this work has to be congratulated. To say thank you in this moment. I believe that under the CEFTA chairmanship of North Macedonia, many priorities areas of cooperation are advanced and will be advanced. The green and digital transition of our economies remain of high importance. The economic and investment plan with almost 30 billion euros of investments to come is certainly a necessity. First and above all, it comes in a post-pandemic area, and secondly, for our mutual economic goals to be achieved. Each of our countries is small economies, but altogether we are a much bigger economy. And this is how we are seeing each other during the last years. The Western Balkan agenda is a living engagement, and it has been materialized day after day. In Albania, despite the major challenges of the last 2 years, and let me remind you, first the earthquake and second the pandemic situation, Albania continued to maintain a very stable market economic situation, and its projects towards GDP growth for this year are quite positive at 5.5%, and it will continue to be in a forecast of 4.5% in average for the following years to come. Foreign trade has increased significantly, exports by 35% and imports by 30%. Financial activities has proceeded at a positive trend with an increase of 6% of lending activities, and I want to state no remarkable increase of non-performing loans rates. Deposits have also recorded an important increase. Overall, the situation in terms of financial situation and macroeconomic stability is quite positive. International agencies have reconfirmed the evaluation at stable economy for Albania, and this stability is definitely transmitted into more opportunities in the labor markets and attraction to foreign direct investors, which definitely this year will not be with the same speed as we have projected in the last and previous years, but the perspectives are quite open. The country has been very active with its contribution to the Common Regional Market Action Plan 2021-2024, which is based on EU standards and identify the key areas of cooperation, which my previous colleague have mentioned. So definitely we have a plan in which we and each country in this region is contributing with all its energies and positiveness to achieve, because it is very important to our economies, our countries, the perspective on EU membership, but above all, the whole journey to reach in this process and this objective with a region that is stable in many terms, but above all in economical terms. In Albania, we see that the situation that has been quite developed on a stability mode has been also quite effect of the measures that the government has undertaken during last year. Both in terms of measures that have been introduced to support businesses and individuals with direct support, but a very important role has been also in relation to the massive vaccination that the government has taken as a platform in which not only the focus has been to ensure the life and health of the citizens, but also to provide to our economies more stability. The cooperation, as I mentioned earlier in the region, is high in the agenda of the government for its third mandate, and we are very open to the discussions of today's meeting. Thank you very much.
We will continue now with Mrs. Burns, the Ambassador of the United States of America in North Macedonia. As we journalists used to say, the United States are politically back on the Western Balkans. What will be the priorities of this region?
Well, good morning, everyone. And before I start with a few brief remarks and an answer to Sonia's question here, I just want to thank the organizers of this event, the Delphi Economic Forum and the Hellenic Business Association in North Macedonia, for bringing us all together for this important conversation. I think it's very timely as we all look at dealing with the #1 global challenge for all of us, which is the pandemic and the economic recovery, talking about how regional cooperation and integration can help accelerate recovery is important to all of our countries, all of our governments, all of our economies, and all of our businesses. As to your question, what are the United States' priorities in the Western Balkans? I would say that they are both very clear and that they haven't changed. We continue to see the region's future at peace with itself, with its neighbors, and stable, prosperous, and fully integrated into the Euro-Atlantic framework. So again, none of that has changed. We do remain disappointed that the EU member states were unable to include approval of North Macedonia's negotiating framework at the General Affairs meeting yesterday. But there is no doubt that North Macedonia has done the work necessary to launch the EU accession talks, and that is a move that we believe would increase regional stability, it would advance political and economic connectivity with Europe, and it would help the transatlantic relationship more broadly. In fact, this is something in which we and our European partners agree, that the convergence of the Western Balkans economies with those of the EU would mean a more stable, stronger, prosperous Europe. And given that the EU is also our most important trading partner, this is something in which we all have a shared stake. It is clear to us that regional stability is intimately intertwined with economic stability. Regional stability that is broadly shared, both within and with other countries, that can foster prosperity and progress. It is obviously a necessary precondition for trade and investment, for sustained economic growth, and for greater opportunities for citizens throughout the region. And as has been noted, when looking from the outside, each of the Western Balkan countries individually represents very small market for serious investors. But taken together, this potential market of 18 million consumers is extremely attractive to large, strong American and European investors. And while that is certainly the view from the outside, I think it is extremely encouraging that the governments in this region have taken that view on board as well and dedicated such energy and initiative into this kind of economic, trade, political cooperation on all fronts. And in this framework, I want to note how much recent progress of the recent years have brought progress here in North Macedonia from our perspective. North Macedonia has left behind political instability. It has taken on important democratic reforms. It has become a partner that is capable of bolstering security, stability, and prosperity across the entire Balkan region. And it has shown that it is willing to do the hard work that is necessary to achieve strategic objectives. Signing the Prespa Agreement, becoming part of NATO, unlocking the path to the EU. These are just some of the notable successes. And now it's time for investments and trade to begin to reap the economic benefits that these political wins have brought. And it's time for economic growth to pick up. North Macedonia's bilateral trade relationship with the other Western Balkans countries, with its neighbors and other EU countries, including Greece and Bulgaria, it's critical. It is continuing to grow, but the regional the regional economic cooperation that we see taking place today can only further accelerate that economic growth. We agree and support all of the efforts that have been taken among the countries of the region to expand these regional efforts. We see the Berlin process, in particular the Declaration on the Common Market and the Declaration on the Green Agenda, as two very important successes in moving this relationship forward and expanding on it. And we really took note that when North Macedonia took presidency of the CEFTA at the beginning of 2021, it took on board not only the values and standards of CEFTA, but also the priorities to create a region without any obstacles to trade. And this makes good sense, because obviously construction of a common regional market is a way to increase the region's competitiveness even before it becomes fully integrated into the EU market. We've also been encouraged by the progress that North Macedonia and its regional neighbors have made with respect to reforming their energy sectors and opening markets on the energy front. Investments in energy diversification are smart investments. Clearly diversified energy sources and clean technologies will not only bring positive economic benefits, but they also bolster domestic and regional energy security. And at the same time, they contribute to the region's climate commitments. As North Macedonia plans to increase its investments in solar, wind, hydro, and biogas capacities, we are confident that transparent and free market competition will appeal to businesses and attract investments. And this increased production capacity, combined with the government's plans to upgrade its electricity transmission network, will further connect North Macedonia and the region. We're also fully supportive and encouraging of the deeper bilateral and multilateral government and business cooperation that we've seen today, in fact, that we see here today in the gathering of this forum. I was thrilled to see that the government of North Macedonia met with several American firms while they were in Athens for the Delphi Economic Forum, leading to a number of potential business opportunities here. Again, chambers of commerce, business associations can be the essential connective tissue across borders, and the progress that's being taken place on this front, the discussions that will take place later this afternoon, are an important part of this. I encourage business leaders to think of the regional market here when they're expanding their operations, reaching out to counterparts, including the fellow business chambers, both to understand the situation that's happening here, but really to take advantage of the opportunities that we now see taking place across borders. As the United States, we would also like to see North Macedonia and the region develop stronger transportation links. Again, the Berlin process has been an excellent means of prioritizing and advancing some of these projects. We continue to see progress on corridors 8 and 10, facilitating train and transportation with among the Balkan states as a benefit to the greater European Union. I would also encourage governments and businesses to apply these same principles and standards to the services market and to build a single market in services as well. One way that we as the United States are helping with these efforts is through USAID programming that is intended to enhance trade and transport facilities and cross-border cooperation. Earlier this month, of course, the Prime Ministers of North Macedonia and Albania signed a bilateral framework agreement on joint border crossing points, and next month I look forward to participating in the handover of border control equipment to the Customs Administration at the Kaifasan border crossing between the two countries. We anticipate that these efforts will significantly reduce the time for movement of goods across the border and will serve as a model for establishing more jointly operated border crossings in the region. Another area that I think is increasingly important, particularly when we talk about citizens and people here, is reducing friction in the labor markets. Harmonization is equally, if not more important in the labor markets, which are currently regulated country by country. And I think that efforts to remove the barriers in this space will really help people live and work where the need is greatest and where the opportunities are maximized. At the end of the day, North Macedonia belongs in the European Union, and while it's a long path, it's important to continue to make progress on these goals. Fundamentally, the steps in this process are of enormous benefit to the people of this country. Steps like strengthening the rule of law and meaningfully fighting corruption, improving infrastructure, integrating your economy with that of your neighbors, creating a fair and level playing field for investment and for business. These are things that are not only EU benchmarks, but they're most importantly for North Macedonia and for the people of this country, especially the youth. And I think no conversation on regional stability is complete without discussing specifically the issue of corruption. And as many of you may know, on June 3rd, President Biden released a memorandum that declared countering corruption as a core national security interest of the United States. This memorandum recognizes that countering corruption is fundamentally about preserving and strengthening democracy. And if political leaders steal from their country's citizens, flout the rule of law or an independent judiciary, then economic growth slows, inequality widens, equitable access to services is undercut, markets are distorted, talent flees, and the trust in government simply plummets. So what you have in effect is not only a weakened economy, but an undermined democracy. And as President Biden recently said on his trip to Europe to renew the transatlantic relationship in many respects, he said, we have to build the shared future that we seek. And continuing to build out connections between North Macedonia and its neighbors will build that shared future. It will allow both this country and the region to benefit from each other's networks. It will increase the security of supplies, and it will bring significant investment opportunities for U.S., but also for other regional businesses. So now, of course, it is time to keep moving forward, to continue implementing the structural reforms that are designed to revive the post-COVID economy, to strengthen democratic institutions, and to make them more independent, more transparent, and more accountable. And I think it goes without saying, but I will reiterate once again that the United States will be with North Macedonia, as it will be with the region, on every step of this journey, because it is important to our shared strategic interests as well. So thank you, Sonia.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Burns. As you mentioned, and others, the Berlin process, one is the strongest regional initiative among many. So I would like to invite Mrs. Holstein, the Ambassador of Germany, to tell us what are now the perspective of the Berlin process.
Dear ministers, colleagues, distinguished participants, I'm very honored to be given the possibility to address this outstanding event, and thank you to the organizers for making it happen. The title of this session is somewhat provocative. Stability is not a gift. It is a result of hard labor. It requires political will, dedication, sometimes courage, and a leap of faith to overcome obstacles. And maybe it requires 71 regional initiatives. The basis for better regional cooperation is trust. Trust and dialogue are needed most in order to overcome the past and build a future together. It is hard work and it takes time. So far in this region, ethno-nationalist narratives still tend to fail on fertile ground. The speculations on border changes along ethnic lines in the past weeks have shown that. Such ideas are dangerous in a region where people of many ethnic backgrounds live together. They are detrimental to closer economic cooperation, and they take the region away from the European path. Ladies and gentlemen, regional stability and cooperation was what Germany, and especially the Federal Chancellor, had in mind when inviting to the first Berlin Conference in 2014, becoming then the Berlin Process. Initially planned for 4 years, the Berlin Process has proven beneficial for the positive development of the region and thus has been continued. This is visible in its concrete results, such as the roaming agreement abolishing all roaming fees in the Western Balkans, the establishment of RICO, the green lanes for maintaining the transport of goods in the pandemic on the start for a common the start for a common regional market at last year's summit in Sofia, successfully co-chaired by North Macedonia and Bulgaria. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown yet again that in moments of crisis, working together is crucial. Global challenges don't stop at borders. Recent deliveries of vaccines to the Western Balkans through COVAX and the European Union are concrete examples of solidarity and multilateral engagement. And also the Western Balkans the Western Balkan countries themselves have demonstrated solidarity and cooperation. We need to work together in the region and in Europe as a whole in order to manage old and new challenges and to build our European future together. The citizens in the Western Balkans have high expectations, and rightly so. They want to see the pressing needs concerning economic growth, health, jobs, and rule of law addressed. They want to see acknowledgement of their irreversible path of the region into the European Union and our assistance on it. This is exactly the core aim of the Berlin process. First, to improve the life of the citizens in the region with concrete projects, and second, to speed up EU integration. Since 2014, the Western Balkan countries have achieved a lot in the Berlin process. Connectivity in the region has become a priority. Thanks to the establishment of RICO, young people get to know each other better. And thanks to the roaming agreement, doing business and maintaining friendships have become a lot cheaper. And last but not least, good neighborly relations have improved considerably. At the Berlin Process Summit, the Western Balkan countries have again demonstrated their joint high ambitions. The decision to build a common regional market is historic. The common regional market will bring the 4 EU freedoms to the region. Such an idea was inconceivable just a few years ago. This project will have a positive impact on the life of everyone in the region. Germany hopes for more tangible progress by the summit in Berlin in July. The future EU membership of the Western Balkans is our joint vision. It is also our geostrategic interest, and Germany remains firmly committed to this goal. The EU perspective remains as well the main driver of reforms in the frame for stability in the Western Balkans. These reforms are first and foremost in the interest of the people in the region. Strengthening rule of law, fighting corruption and organized crime, opening democratic space are key factors for resilient democracies. They are also important for attracting foreign investments. And last but not least, they open up perspectives for people in the Western Balkans. If we want young people to build their future in the Western Balkans at home, governments must take credible and sustainable reforms a priority. By the same token, the EU must stand by its commitments. The approach, you deliver, we deliver, must hold true. With the Prespa Agreement, Athens and Skopje have shown historic political leadership and removed a long-standing obstacle on North Macedonia's EU path. It is important that the accession talks with North Macedonia and Albania now start as soon as possible. The Portuguese Council presidency has done all it could to advance in this matter. As it looks right now, the following Slovenian presidency will have to take it from there. Germany will remain a staunch supporter in making it happen. The future EU membership of the Western Balkans is our joint vision and our joint geostrategic interest. We are now in the full swing of events leading to the Berlin Process Summit on 5th of July. Foreign ministers met already, ministers of health met, a forum first initiated by the Macedonian Minister of Health and his Bulgarian counterpart last autumn. Ministers of Interior and of Economy will follow. Another gathering of the Civil Society Forum, a so-called Roma Ministerial, and a Youth Forum complete the picture. The Macedonian proposal brought forward at the Foreign Ministers meeting to establish an exchange of young diplomats is very welcome and will further allow to getting to know each other better. Much helped by the Regional Cooperation Council, work on the summit deliverables is still ongoing, such as on an agreement on free movement with ID cards in the region, the plan to create a unified visa area, and recognizing academic and professional qualifications. All this, if achieved, would make a huge difference in citizens' lives. This is what the Berlin process is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Holstein. We will continue with our neighbor, Mr. Ambassador Roussos Kounduras, Ambassador of Greece in North Macedonia. Will you please tell us, with this blockade of EU integration for North Macedonia and Albania, what are the biggest challenges now for our two countries and for the whole region of Western Balkans?
Thank you very much, Sanya. Excellencies, distinguished guests, let me acknowledge the efforts of the organizers of this gathering, a very important one. Thank you very much. You are asking where we are standing now. Regional stability and cooperation, as is the title of this discussion, is of course a tantalizing issue, and since many, many years in the region. Since the beginning of the 1990s, we have witnessed cycles of destabilization in the Western Balkans and successive efforts to achieve stability and, if possible, progress. Much has been achieved in many countries, this is clear, even though complex issues persist in some cases and they need to be tackled. With the time, we have learned that working together in the region of Southeastern Europe is crucial for many reasons. I will give some examples. I don't differ with the others. Through enhanced economic cooperation, we are better equipped to achieve growth and create jobs as it is necessary, especially for the younger generations. Security challenges, such as organized crime, human trafficking, or violent extremism, can be better addressed by combining efforts. Environment protection is a common challenge, and addressing climate change is in everybody's interest. Intensified dialogue can help mutual understanding and the faster resolution of difficulties. And the current pandemic has demonstrated that solidarity is necessary. Greece needs definitely stability and good neighborly relations along its northern borders and solid democracies to deal with. So, from the Greek perspective, we welcome the progress made, and we are ready to contribute and cooperate with all our neighbors in making it sustainable. In the troubled 1990s, Greece was already an anchor of stability in Southeastern Europe, being a stable democracy, a NATO ally, and a European Union member state. On the political front, Greece firmly supported the accession of neighboring Bulgaria and of Romania to the European Union. Upon Greek initiative, the European perspective was first opened for the Western Balkans at the Thessaloniki summit in 2003. As the societies in Eastern Europe went through big difficulties at that time, Greece welcomed hundreds of thousands of migrants who were seeking alternatives and jobs. It is hosting large numbers still now. Greek business have been investing in the region in many sectors, helped in the creation of jobs and the promotion of skills, substantially contributing to the transition efforts towards adopting market economy and European standards in many of our neighbors. Today, we are even more convinced that a merit-based approach of European Union membership is the right policy towards the Western Balkan partners in political, security, and economic terms. We strongly support the intensification of the Union's engagement in the region, making the best of the various tools available to assist the Western Balkan governments speed up the necessary reforms. We know this is not an easy task. However, we trust that the next reform steps will be taken in order not to lose the momentum. I would like to reiterate, concerning especially North Macedonia, that the Prespa Agreement provides the basis for the establishment of a bilateral strategic partnership, and we should continue to work in order to achieve this major objective in the interest of our societies, our countries, and the wider region. The full, consistent, and in good faith implementation of the Prespa Agreement is essential and a criterion to evaluate North Macedonia's EU accession process. Let me mention a couple of things, if I have time, that the traditionally close bilateral economic relations have excellent perspectives to further intensify to the mutual benefit. I wish to underline the projects of strategic importance in the energy sector to interconnect the two countries, as well as the wider region, so as to secure the diversification of sources of energy and lower costs. I should add that the two countries are now connected by modern highway infrastructure, the Trans-European Corridor 10, that facilitates access to the Thessaloniki harbor and beyond. The same goes for tourism. As NATO allies, Greece and North Macedonia have achieved remarkable progress concerning contacts between their respective military through participation in exercises and training events. The Greek Air Force is patrolling North Macedonia's airspace in the NATO context. This is an example of working close together, and it is a guarantee for security in the whole region and hopefully for a better future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Koundaros. We will continue with Mrs. Galloway, the ambassador of United Kingdom. Mrs. Galloway, Great Britain is present for many, many years in North Macedonia and other Balkan countries, assisting with reforms. But for today's perspective, what do you think, what are the challenges of North Macedonia and the whole region?
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organisers of this excellent event. I think the first thing I would say is that it's difficult going at this point on the panel, because what we can see is actually there's really broad agreement to what the challenges are and what the positives are. So you'll be pleased to know I've cut some bits of what I was going to say. But the thing that there really is very clear agreement from everyone and within the country and with successive governments and with all the mainstream political parties is that EU membership at the moment is the primary aim and the step most likely to bring economic benefits for North Macedonia and the other aspiring countries in the region. And even with the bumps in the road that we've had and continue to have, it's really great that we've gotten this far, and we really shouldn't forget the progress that's been made. Things have felt slow at times, but in the last 3 years alone, North Macedonia has made significant advances at home and internationally. And each of these steps should be seen as a progression towards a brighter economic future. As a number of people have mentioned, North Macedonia has met the conditions to start EU accession. The Prespa Agreement has moved things forward again, bringing an end to a very long impasse. And amidst the first wave of the pandemic, we welcomed North Macedonia as a new NATO ally. And NATO membership is a huge contribution to geopolitical stability, and it was no easy task and sends a very strong message about North Macedonia's stability and place on the world stage. Minister Osmani and my German colleague both spoke about the Berlin process, of which the UK is a firm supporter and active participant. Just last month, the UK and North Macedonia co-hosted a Berlin process security meeting ahead of the ministerial summits. And that was a meeting focused on security commitments and regional security cooperation, and it's by improving this security and stability that a healthy economy can flourish. Central to this are the issues of corruption and illicit finance, and as we speak in Ohrid, dozens of technical experts from across the region are working to develop a regional anti-corruption and illicit finance roadmap. Addressing these issues, which erode democracy and trap people in poverty, are key to building a thriving economy. Regional economic cooperation is also key, and as this event itself shows, economic cooperation with Greece is now in a much more positive place. And as the ambassador set out, there is an enormous amount of scope for this to develop further in the years to come. So while there are many positives, the risk is stagnation while we do wait for full Euro-Atlantic integration. And there is a reality in the region that people will vote with their feet. Polling shows that unemployment and the state of the economy are top concerns for many citizens. So, underpinning the progress and potential that we've set out are the essential reforms being undertaken by the government. The institutions need capacity, integrity, and impartiality in order to provide a state that offers a strong economy and an empowered society. And all of this needs to happen in parallel with the EU accession journey. North Macedonia and the other countries in the region must focus on these internal reforms, build open societies, and galvanize the rule of law in order to deliver economic growth and economic benefits before and when they become EU members. It's also important to note that not everyone in this country and in the world wants to see these reforms succeed. Serving their own vested interests, they prioritize their own economic or political gains over North Macedonia's economy and citizens. They want to exploit bilateral disputes and differences to give themselves the advantage. Closer integration with the rules-based international order does not just ensure greater stability, but also promotes investment, enterprise, and innovation. A business climate, on the other hand, that opens the door to corruption and political influence damages consumer and customer confidence alike. Predictable, fair, and interconnected economies flourish. They bounce back quicker after shocks like this pandemic, and they can tackle looming challenges such as climate and the environment through the work set out by the Prime Minister on the energy strategy, and they can deliver really ambitious climate targets that North Macedonia has set itself. If these challenges are met with collaboration, commitment, patience, North Macedonia can be, as it should be, a leader and an example for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Galloway. Now I would like to invite Mr. Silvestri, the ambassador of Italy in North Macedonia. Mr. Silvestri, could you share any experiences of Italy as a member of EU, and what are your suggestions how those part of Europe should develop?
Thank you, Sania. Good morning to all, Minister, fellow ambassadors, distinguished participants. Thank you also on my side to the organizer for inviting me to such a stimulating event. I would like to start by saying that the idea you had of matching stability and regional cooperation is very appropriate. In a survey published some years ago, Why Nations Fail, the Origins of Power, Prosperity and Poverty, this survey identified the key to the success of nations in political and economic institutions, while other factors such as weather, geography, and the possession of natural resources were considered less relevant. And a very important element of the institutional framework of a state, a successful state, is undoubtedly given by stability, both internally and externally, because these feed the trust, and trust is a key component of economic growth of a country. Without trust, there can be no exchanges, no investments. And trust presupposes stability, and this in turn is closely linked to the international positioning and regional cooperation of a state. And you mentioned our experience. Well, after the devastation of the Second World War, we've seen that it was possible to pursue the goal of reconstructing and growing, but only within a framework of international stability. So, after the conclusion of peace agreements, the first choices were Atlantic Alliance and European integration. And since then, these are the two pillars of our foreign policies, and they allowed us to focus our energies on building a modern economy, competing on wider markets and promoting growth and prosperity. So this is also the goal of North Macedonia nowadays, and you know that Italy has always supported your country in attaining these objectives. The first one has already been attained, and it's important now we have to complete formally the process for starting negotiation for the second one. In our view, let me say that all Western Balkans, each at its own speed, should reach this final goal, European integration. There is no doubt on that, and we are staunch supporter of this perspective. Concerning North Macedonia, despite the efforts made by Portuguese presidency and also at bilateral level, yesterday the CAG was unable to take the step forward we hoped for, but at this point we urge every actor to act with responsibility and also urgency in order to to implement the decision which has already been taken by the European Council of March 2020 to be implemented. Anyway, a lot has been done already, and a lot will have to be done because European integration will be a process, not a decision with immediate effect. Therefore, all the steps that shall be taken internally in terms of reforms in order to bring your legislation closer to European standards are extremely positive, extremely important. An agenda of reform, this is what we continue to need today. And this can also be done at a regional level. This is an approach that Italy strongly supports. You know that nowadays the two pillars of our foreign policy are the Western Balkans and the Mediterranean. There's no doubt on that. We are among the main economic partners of the region and direct investors with thousands of Italian companies active in the region. And we share a lot, so a long history, cultural interests, geographical proximity, and this is why this region is strategic to us. And this is why we promoted initiatives such as the Central European Initiative, the Adriatic Ionic Initiative, which is the political forum where we discuss of EUSER, the European Strategy for Adriatic and Ionic region. And this is one of the four strategic strategy of the European Union. And we put also money, we financed a fund with the EBRD in order to promote technical cooperation with this region. And we believe very much in the dialogue also between administration to enhance their performances, but also to advance regional cooperation in sectorial fields. And we do pay attention very much to all the efforts that you're doing at regional level. We do think that it's very good idea, the perspective of the creation of a common regional market that shall ensure the four freedoms of movement along the lines of our European common market will be an important step for the region, but also an initiative consistent with the goal of European integration in a logic of complementarity and gradualism. Dear friends, North Macedonia is a crossroads of various Balkan countries, so I think that for you, regional cooperation is a sort of natural vocation. But I have to acknowledge that this vocation is not just a geographic one, but it has become a political vocation, because your country has chosen to build its own identity on internal dialogue and dialogue with neighboring countries. This is very important. Then we need, of course, the infrastructure. The role of infrastructure is very important, and in this regard, the completion of Corridor 8, which in fact, I tend to say that starts from Durazzo, but starts also from our ports, because we are just in front of this city. It's an important, will be an important step. This infrastructure crosses with Corridor 10. This is an opportunity for your country to the extent that you will be able to act also as a regional hub, not just as a simple country of crossing. You should avoid to become a sort of flyover state, but you have to work hard in order to attract investment, also with always with a regional perspective, of course. I think that greater regional cooperation will also allow, this has already been said, to tackle more effectively also some other common challenges, thinking to energy, fight against climate change, fight against human trafficking, terrorism, international crime, and so on. But at this point, let me conclude by raise also one other point. Infrastructure and regional cooperation are very good, are precondition for economic progress, but alone they're not sufficient. It's important also to involve, it's necessary to involve the people. Last Saturday, the conference on the future of Europe was launched. And this is an extremely important event that will involve the institutions, representatives from the governments, the parliament, but also civil society and the people of our countries.
Mr. Ambassador, I don't want to be rude, but I hope we will have a little bit time for discussions. I hope you're on the end.
Just to say
Thank you.
that Italy wants to organize a conference of youngsters to give voice to them, and we want to involve the Western Balkans and the Mediterranean in that, because we have to give voice to the demand of Europe that is present here when we discuss of our common house of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Silvestri. Now we can have like half an hour for discussion about the issues raised about the participants, but I would like to ask Mr. Osmani, our foreign ministry, about the issue which is in the air. We started with the regional cooperation, but this is a day after North Macedonia, together with Albania, was vetoed in Luxembourg, not starting again the accession negotiation.
Well, thank you. I intentionally skipped talking about the elephant in the room. Hope that in few days emotions will settle and I will be more rational in the assessment what happened and what's going to happen. I share the disappointment and understand the disappointment of our citizens who have been living in the last 20 years with these yearly cycles of raised hope and disappointment, and they are exhausted. And they are rightly asking is this becoming a moving, moving target? Is there a conditionality in the first place? Is this process credible? But they are still unshaken in regard to their vision and their ambition to see integration as the final end of this road. And you can see this in all the polls where favorability to join EU is more than 80%. But I do understand their exhaustion living with these cycles of raised hope and disappointment, but not only of our citizens. I think that the eyes of the citizens of the region are turned to the case of North Macedonia, since they are asking, if it didn't work for them, why it would work for us? Whether it is worthy to go through all the difficult compromises that we went through and then not to have concrete results in the process. But I will say here another example on another road that we had, just to bring some more optimism to it. In 1993, the Parliament of North Macedonia adopted a declaration by consensus that we want a full membership to NATO. It took us 30 years, the same path, with so many disappointments and frustration on the road. Imagine a situation if in 2015, when the prospect to join NATO was at its darkest point, or at its lowest point. And what if we quit then, in 2015, even though the membership opportunity was just round the corner? And I think this is a similar process. It's not about whether we are going to join EU. There's no alternative. And I said the reason why. Simply is geographically impossible to have another solution. Europe is not completed without Western Balkan. Is economically is impossible. Is culturally is impossible. Security-wise is impossible to have a Europe without Western Balkan in it. The question is when this will happen. And I think that we need to continue to work. There's no alternative to good neighborliness as well. So we will continue to work having the proposal of the last Portuguese presidents as the only functional proposal on the table. And I hope that the Slovenian presidency will take this proposal and we will continue to build on it. So my message to the citizens will be that we have to endure, we have to stay. Integration is not a transactional process, it's a transformative process. We are growing with it, we are maturing with it, and one day we will become a member of European Union.
Thank you. I would like to ask now Mrs. Burns, at the end of your speech you mentioned the executive orders of your President Biden about the corruption on the Western Balkans. How big is the risk for stability of the Western Balkans because of the corruption?
So thank you for that question. What I raised first was actually a memorandum that came out on June 3rd from President Biden with respect to corruption as a core national security interest, and that is corruption around the globe. It is corruption that affects the United States in any way. But it is an important part of the discussion here today, and it was followed just 5 days later by an update to an executive order that actually originally came out in 2003 with reflected concerns that we had about destabilizing efforts in the Western Balkans, which is a way of saying that that vision of Europe whole, free, and at peace, and our commitment to seeing this region fully integrated in Euro-Atlantic institutions hasn't changed, just as it won't change today. It requires new investment, it requires new focus, it requires the continuation of the reforms. The new executive order to which you're referring, and which has certainly gotten a lot of attention here, is a modernized update of how we see destabilizing efforts in 2021 as opposed to 2003 and around the world. And it reflects the fact that when you're talking about building strong economies, building strong citizenry, being prepared to fight the global challenges, democratic institutions are the strongest factor that we face. And one of the biggest threats to those democratic institutions is the role of corruption and how actors can use corruption to undermine those institutions to which we and all the citizens rely on. So the purpose of the executive order on June 8th with respect to sanctions in the Western Balkans was intended to send a signal that we are not going to endorse or allow efforts that have and could threaten the progress that we've seen made. You saw an important reflection of the PRESPA agreement in that executive order, because we think that that agreement has had a profound and positive effect in building the kind of regional cooperation that we're talking about today. It includes Albania, because in our view the Western Balkans is and includes Albania when we talk about the future. So that's an important part of it. And it gives us another tool to identify ways that we can help strengthen the larger reform efforts here. It is intended to help guide our efforts. It's intended to be a tool that we can use with our partners to reinforce those efforts. And I think it's very much in keeping with the general theme of this conference here today, which is that it's only by looking at the regional factors and cooperating as shared partners in a strategic future that we can achieve the kind of future that is necessary and that, frankly, our citizens demand.
Thank you for your answer. I would like to invite Mrs. Dinaj, if she is still with us. Yes, of course, from Tirana. Mrs. Dinaj, what was the reaction in Albania of the Albanian government about the decision yesterday about the blocking starting of the accession process in the European Union for Albania?
Definitely. We are looking forward for this process to be positive at the end. We have not lost. This has been our commitment, country's commitment, our citizens' commitment since many years now. But we are optimistic that the process will have to continue with the same perspective from our end, and we would work on our homeworks in order to achieve that this answer comes positive in a sooner rather than later period of time. Definitely, we have a journey in which many processes have started. I want to mention here that in a technical level, we are working hard to make our legislations be as close as the EU legislation possible. Ministry of Finance and Economy leads 13 chapters, and we are working on a daily basis on that, and this process is still having the high and utmost attention. On a political level, we'll be patient and work and the perspective, as I mentioned earlier.
With Ambassador Mrs. Holstein, let's go back to the regional cooperation. What do you think, Mrs. Holstein, because of the bilateral issues on the Western Balkan, we still have a bilateral issue, meaning Serbia and Kosovo. Now North Macedonia and Albania are blocked again because of the bilateral issue. What is the exit, what is the way out? Because all those bilateral issues are on the path of EU integration and, of course, of regional cooperation.
Well, the position of almost all EU member states on that issue is very clear. Bilateral issues need to be solved bilaterally. And this has been repeated at yesterday's General Affairs Council by 25 member states. So this is very impressive. And I think this is a huge difference also if we look at last year's deliberations in the Council. now it is really understood that it's in the strategic interest of everybody, of the region, as it has been mentioned by many speakers, that the process moves forward and does not remain blocked. By the way, it was not a veto, neither a negative decision. It was no decision yesterday. That's a difference. Just to be legally correct. It would be a difference if there would have been a negative decision. There was none. It doesn't help in the process, but I think it's important to notice that it's just the absence of the decision that does not allow it to move forward. I truly believe that by now the ground has been amazingly well prepared by the Portuguese presidency, who took it from our efforts last year that unfortunately were not successful. And I'm sure that our Slovene friends will take it over in July with the same energy as during the Portuguese presidency, and will bring it soon to the result we are all wishing for, aiming at, and which is without any alternative, as it has been stated by many speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Galloway, would you like to comment also about the bilateral issues on the Balkans and what is the impact of the regional cooperation?
Thank you. I think I'd pick up on some points that were made in a number of people's interventions, which is it's difficult to solve these bilateral issues. We shouldn't pretend that they're easy. They've brought an enormous amount of difficulties in the region over the last 30 years, and I'm not even going to do the 100 years before then. So when we have made progress, we do need to celebrate it, and we do need to then showcase that it works, because actually what Greece and North Macedonia did is an example to the rest of the region that you can make hard decisions, that you do have to push your population to accept hard decisions in the interest of the wider good. But it therefore makes it more incumbent on us in the international community to work with the countries that have made those difficult decisions and showcase them as a success. Because if they don't, then people won't make them, and people will go in the wrong direction, and that has a negative impact for all of us, not just the citizens of the countries involved.
Thank you. Mr. Kounduros, will you please tell us, again, I'm back on the regional cooperation, raising this question now and this issue with this kind of stalemate of the enlargement of European Union, here all the Balkans is seen as shall we expect a Balkan Union to replace the European Union? How would you comment on that, please?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. Balkan cooperation is fine. We should be promoting this. Greece is very interested in cooperation among regional cooperation, as we mentioned before. I think what I said before is quite clear. We support the accession path of the Western Balkan countries. We would like to see our direct neighbors becoming members of the European Union. This, of course, goes along with reform effort. There is a strange thing there that reform is painful and has to be done. It's required by EU, this is true, but you have also to view it as important for the sake of the citizens of the countries. So reform must go on. I understand the disappointment, but disappointment should not prevail. I see that progress is being achieved in the region. I was here in Skopje. I served in the liaison office of Greece at the time. And I see the situation now. Enormous progress has been achieved. I think economy has gone forward. Institutions have improved, so we can be optimistic for the future. And as the Minister said, I think we have now plenty of channels of communication open in the region, so we can be optimistic for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And in the end, I would like to ask Mr. Silvestri, what should the leaders of the countries of the Western Balkans tell to their youth about the perspective of the Western Balkans? So many young people are leaving our countries. Many are even moving to Italy and other European Union countries. What's supposed to be the message to the...
Thank you. I think it's up to the leader to convey a positive message of trust, of perspective, because, as I said earlier, a lot has already been done. There's no visa required to travel with Italy and other European countries. There is, the communication are much easier. There is a cultural proximity and so on. But the message should be also that there will be an opportunity of growth, of economic growth, here also in the country. In Italy, we have an important Macedonian diaspora. It's interesting also to see to which extent the second generation is interested also to act as a bridge between the two countries and promoting exchanges and trade between them. But anyway, youngsters, they look to the future, and no doubt that we will have a common future, because in our view, as I said, and as also Minister Di Maio said recently, the European Union will not be completed unless the Balkans are in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We came to the end of this panel. Thank you very much, ministers and ambassadors, for taking part of the discussion. It was really great to hear your views and opinions of your countries. So we are ending now. I wish everybody to have further good discussion on this first economic forum in Skopje. Thank you very much.